I don't know where to begin this story. I guess I should start with the fact that I was at the very bottom of my life at that moment. It felt like the whole world had collapsed around me. I had lost my job. I was accumulating debt. My relationship had ended in a painful breakup, and every new day felt like a trial. I would wake up in the morning and not know why I was even getting out of bed. That's when he showed up. I remember that day, down to the smallest detail. I was sitting in a cafe, hiding behind a cup of cheap coffee, because I didn't even have money for a normal lunch. The phone was shaking in my hands. Collectors were calling every 2 hours. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, and I tried not to let anyone see my weakness. He sat down at the next table, tall, confident, with a slight smile. It seemed as if none of the troubles that had befallen me had touched him. But the most amazing thing was that he noticed me. His gaze lingered longer than usual, and then he spoke. Having a hard day, he asked calmly, as if we knew each other. I flinched, not expecting anyone to address me. Usually at such moments, people tried to look away, as if someone else's pain was something contagious. But he looked straight at me, too hard. I blurted out. I was even surprised that I admitted this to a stranger. He nodded, and for some reason sat down next to me. We started talking. I didn't notice how time flew by. He listened, really listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't judge, didn't advise. He just let me talk, and it was the first relief in months. That day, I left the cafe with an unexpected feeling that I felt better. And most importantly, his number appeared in my phone. He said, "If things get really bad, call me." I didn't think I'd dare. But after a couple of days, I dialed him. And from that moment on, the story that turned my life upside down began. He became my salvation. When I fell, he caught me. When I lost hope, he inspired me. He helped me find a new job, supported me in everything, even lent me money when I couldn't cope. It seemed to me that a guardian angel in human form appeared next to me. I got used to calling him for any reason, from trifles to serious troubles, and every time he was there. Gradually I began to believe that maybe fate had given me a second chance after all. But this is where my dependence on him began. We began to see each other more and more often. At first, these were random meetings. Lunch, a walk, calls in the evenings. Then he became part of my schedule. If before I woke up with a feeling of emptiness, now I opened my eyes and checked my phone. Had he texted? Every time he called, I was filled with joy. His voice was an anchor for me. Calm, confident, enveloping. I caught myself looking for meaning in his words, reading between the lines, hoping for something more than friendship. He told me little about himself. I knew that he had a business, that he often went on business trips, that he had a lot to do, but all the details of his life seemed to dissolve in the fog. However, I did not ask unnecessary questions. It was enough for me that he was there. Once, when I was sick, he came in the middle of the night. He brought medicine, made tea, covered me with a blanket. I lay with a fever and watched him fussing around the stove. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that someone needed me. "You are too good for me," I whispered then. He only smiled and said, "Just let yourself be weak. I am here." These words sank deep into me. I was used to coping on my own, to pulling everything on myself, not asking anyone for help. But next to him, I allowed myself to relax. I trusted. Everything in my life gradually began to change. I found a job, began to pay off my debts, believed in myself again, and every time I thought, it's all thanks to him. Without him, I would not have coped, but the more attached I became, the more small details scared me. Sometimes he disappeared. For days, did not answer calls. Sometimes I caught his gaze, in which there was something hidden, heavy. He knew how to be caring and tender, but sometimes he became cold and distant, as if there was a wall between us. One day I asked, "Why do you disappear so suddenly?" He answered briefly, "There are things that are not discussed." I did not press, but anxiety arose, and yet every time he returned, I forgot all my doubts. His presence was like a drug to me. I knew I was becoming addicted, but I couldn't stop. I called him my salvation, but even then, fate had already begun to prepare a lesson for me that would turn everything upside down. We were sitting in the same cafe where we first met. He was talking about something insignificant when suddenly his phone rang. He stood up, abruptly went outside and began to speak in a low voice. I saw his profile in the window, a tense face, rigid movements. When he returned, he was irritated. I asked, "Everything okay?" He snapped, "Yes, business matters." But a shadow flickered in his eyes. We were sitting in the same cafe where we first met. He was talking about something insignificant when suddenly his phone rang. He stood up abruptly, went outside and began to speak in a low voice. I saw his profile in the window, a tense face, stiff movements. When he returned, he was irritated. I asked, "Everything is okay?" He snapped, "Yes, business questions." But a shadow flashed in his eyes. Later, I found out that he was lying. I accidentally overheard his conversation in the car. He was talking not to a business partner, but to a woman. The tone of his voice was soft, gentle, not at all like the way he spoke to me. Then everything inside me broke off, but I did not dare to ask a direct question. I was afraid to hear the truth. Doubts began to eat away at me from within. Every time he disappeared, every evasive word I now perceived as a betrayal. But at the same time, I could not push him away. He was my support, my salvation, and somewhere deep inside I felt, everything that is built on secrecy will one day collapse. Day came that I will never forget. I came to his house, just like that, without warning. I wanted to see how he lives. Maybe all this is just my fears. But what I saw threw me back with the force of a blow. A woman was sitting on the couch. He was hugging her, stroking her back, and she, laughing, whispered something in his ear. At that moment, the whole world around me stopped. I stood in the doorway, unable to move. My head was spinning. My heart was constricted to the point of pain. He saw me at once. His face changed from surprise to a panicked explanation. "It's not what you think." But I was no longer thinking anything. I saw everything. Every movement, every smile, every touch. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned around and walked away, feeling something inside me break completely. I didn't sleep that night. Their faces, their voices, their laughter were spinning in my head. Every "thank you" and "you're good" now sounded like a false echo. I thought about how I trusted him, how I allowed myself to be drawn into dependence on him, how I shared my most intimate thoughts. The next day, I tried to contact him. He responded coldly, distantly, as if nothing had happened. I realized that, for him, this was just a game, and my life had never mattered to him. Every message he sent now cut like a knife. Every explanation he gave sounded like an excuse for a lie. I tried to convince myself that I could forgive, that I could trust again, but I knew it was impossible. I had lost more than just him. I had lost a part of myself, the part that believed, loved, and hoped, the part that thought that someone could actually be your salvation. A few weeks passed. I returned to my normal life, but it didn't feel the same anymore. I went to work again, talked to friends, but inside I was empty. My habit of seeking his approval, his attention, his voice, remained with me. I began to analyze every moment, every word he said. How could I not notice the signals? How could I believe that someone who enters your life at the most difficult moment would be sincere? I understood that he was not the only one to blame. I myself allowed this to happen. I myself gave a part of my soul to a person who was not worthy of it. Sometimes I see him in the city, and my heart sank. Sometimes I catch myself looking for familiar features in other men, hoping that someone will support and care in the same way. But this is an empty hope. I understood the main thing. Salvation cannot be sought in other people. The real salvation is in yourself. Only by accepting your pain, realizing your mistakes, can you start moving on. Today, I stand on the threshold of a new stage. I have learned to trust myself, to listen to my inner voice. I still remember his smile, his care, his voice, and this reminds me that even those who cause pain leave lessons in our lives. I don't know if I will ever meet someone who will truly become my salvation without destroying me. Maybe yes. Maybe it will happen in a year, in 5, or never. But one thing I know for sure, now I am my own anchor, my own savior, and maybe someday I will be able to tell this story calmly, without a trembling voice, without tears and fear. But for now, it remains a part of me, a part of my life, a part of who I became after I trusted a person who turned out to be a stranger.